Hi, this is Irving Steele, your host of Local Issues, and today we are really excited to start celebrating May as Mental Health Awareness Month. And so we were able to have a special guest from a great local organization called Sound Community Services and their Senior Director, Nichole Burns. Welcome, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's great to have you and great to kick off the whole Mental Health Awareness Month. And I'm really curious how and why you got started working in the field of mental health.
So my background with mental health honestly starts from my childhood. I was exposed to mental illness at a very young age and really identified the importance of taking care of our own mental health in order to decrease mental illness within our own lives. With that, I then found myself really enjoying the educational aspect of it, and I went to Eastern Connecticut State University. I then graduated from there in sociology and criminology and got my master's degree in social work. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker.
Oh, great. So it's perfect to be in the field using your degree.
Yes.
It's not always the case where what you study is actually what you go into.
I know. Well, right now I'm in admin, so I do a lot of the training of the employees, work with the DMHAS contracts and that sort of thing. So I don't practice direct clinical work anymore, but I do feel like I am contributing to the impact of mental health awareness through the work that I'm doing now administratively.
That's great. Do you feel like sometimes you miss the kind of one-on-one or group connections with people, or you enjoy now in this more administrative role?
I really do enjoy the administrative aspect. I feel like I reach more people this way. At Sound Community Services, with us being a small mental health organization, I still get to connect with the individuals, laugh and joke with them in the hallways, attend the different events, and of course organize the events that we have in the community.
And I understand there's a really exciting event coming up here pretty soon. What's that?
Actually, it's our first annual 5K race. It's called Endo Stigma Mental Health Awareness 5K. It is a run-walk for those who aren't runners. All are welcome. It is on May 18th. The check-in and event start time is at 9, but the race kicks off at 10 a.m. At Winthrop Elementary School.
Okay, so right here in southeastern Connecticut, anyone who's a runner, a walker, someone who cares passionately about mental health and breaking down that stigma is able to come and join.
Absolutely, and I will give you the link to post as well for registration. But we also will have a lot of family fun activities as well. Coloring, face painting, Rita's is coming down and giving out some ices.
Nice.
And the concept behind all of this is to really, throughout the entire event, give mental health tips and really tie in all of the proactive and reactive ways that we can all take care of our mental health.
And right before we got on to set, we were talking about how being proactive in different things like mental health is just like with physical health. You don't wait until you're obese and you're 500 pounds to start going to the gym, but maybe being proactive, maybe you want to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the CDC identifies and defines mental health as the emotional, psychological, and social well-being of an individual, right? So a lot, growing up in grade school, we have health class, and health class focuses on taking care of the physical ailments or our physical health, learning about smoking cigarettes and the impact of that, and the importance of exercise, etc. But at least when I was in school, we never learned about emotion regulation or emotion identification, right? Those were all things that it was expected that we would learn at home. And if we didn't, then we were reprimanded for acting out behaviors, for lack of a better way of connecting it. So, the way that we dealt with mental illness in the high schools or in the grade schools is detention or suspension, rather than trying to get to the root cause of what is underlying the problematic behaviors that we see in the schools. So really one of my personal missions is really focusing on the mental health aspect of it and really trying to begin to emphasize and teach the generation coming up the importance of proactive mental health.
That sounds great. And that could potentially be one of the silver linings of the pandemic, is that there has been, I feel, a much stronger increase of knowledge and awareness as it connects to social emotional learning, mental health, and behavioral health as well. Are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, it's very hard to connect the pandemic with any sort of silver lining because of the traumatic impact that it has had throughout the country. But
and the world. Everywhere.
Absolutely. I will say that if we were to find a silver lining, it would be that, right? There was a lot of creativity that came out of providing supports and services throughout the pandemic. Telehealth is way more accessible. The reliance on apps, and there's a ton of mindfulness apps, tons of adult coloring, right? Ways for us to utilize technology to proactively take care of our mental health is literally at our fingertips. So although there are pros and cons of the technology, and a lot of the times the cons are emphasized, especially with the upcoming generation, really there is a silver lining to it as well, because we have resources readily available to us.
That's great. And you were mentioning that your organization is almost like this Walmart of behavioral health, that you do a lot of different services for a lot of different people. Maybe you can share a little bit about what that looks like.
Absolutely. So Sound Community Services has outpatient group therapy, individual therapy. We offer medication management. We just recently started a Suboxone program to support the medicated assisted treatment for substance abuse. We have case management services, residential programs, 5 active residential programs. We do have 6 DMHAS contracts, so we're looking for a property for a respite program right now. We also have a social clubhouse, a safe and welcoming area for adults of all ages to drop in and participate in different activities, really increasing healthy socialization and building and creating healthy relationships.
Healthy relationships, and also building a community
Absolutely.
too, which is so vital for people to have overall health and well-being throughout their life.
For sure, and it's a huge aspect of mental wellness. Healthy social relationships. I think also identifying the pandemic as a huge indicator, right? I think we all learned the importance of connection, in-person connection, and support and love and compassion, and at Sound with the Oasis and the Access clubhouses, it really does offer that safe place to build those healthy connections.
That's great. I mean, we're social creatures. We need to be connecting and meeting, interacting with people, and in positive experiences as well.
It's a basic need, and it's one that's not always identified, again, with the emphasis on physical health, right? We talk about needing water, needing food to survive. We also need connection.
And for some people, maybe if they're battling substance abuse, or if they're trying to be sober and not drinking, maybe they don't want to just go over to a bar or go to a pub or different places. So it's nice that you have different opportunities for people to go out there and build that community.
Absolutely, and it's like-minded individuals, right? Individuals who have similar struggles that really can support one another in their road to recovery.
Great. And I was looking at your webpage, and it seems like it's a really easy platform that people can go on there. There's a number there right away if they're having struggles or challenges. They can call the number, and right away they get connected to someone on your team, and they can get them in relatively soon for an intake. Do you want to talk a little bit more about how that process works?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have, like you had mentioned, a really accessible website. You can call the phone number.
Is that 24/7?
It is not. So we don't offer any crisis support. We do. We are at an 8 to 4:30 Monday through Friday facility, but we have an amazing team of client access representatives who return calls in record timing, in my opinion, and really try to get connected. We have a great team of providers, both APRNs and licensed social workers, LPCs, and of all different backgrounds and expertise. Spanish-speaking clinicians and providers as well.
Great. And then what is maybe there is no typical utilization of your services, but maybe you could share a little bit that people, maybe they have an intake, you identify maybe if they speak Spanish, they're able to connect with someone who speaks Spanish, or if they have something like PTSD, maybe they connect with someone who has that background, and then they kind of walk through some of the different service offerings that you provide. Is that kind of how it works?
Absolutely. So really the way that we offer services is we meet the individual where they're at based off of what they want and what they are looking for at the time of the intake. Also, if they are referred by an external resource, really checking in to see on what the motivation was behind the referral to ensure that we can connect them with the right resources. And we have a lot of really great community partners that if we aren't able to offer those services or the individual is interested in something else, we do assist with that connection as well. But it would be an intake, and then they would meet with their clinician within a short period of time and really work their treatment plan collaboratively with their clinician. There is no textbook treatment setup that we have, because really it is an individualized basis. We all come to the table with our own experiences, our own baggage, our own needs, our own perceptions of life. So we want to honor that and we want to support that.
Yeah, and I love how you emphasize the whole collaborative nature of it, both on your team, but then also building the community of people who are receiving the services, then also with the different organizations out in the community to kind of help build these partnerships and fill some of these gaps where they might have a need.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And one of my roles at the agency is to consistently check in and get the pulse of the community and what the community needs. And then I work with my team of leaders, and we identify different grant opportunities and different ways that we can adjust our services and adapt our services to meet the needs of the community.
That's great. So maybe we could talk a little bit about your team there that you mentioned, your leadership team. Gino, I believe, is the leader of your organization. Yes. And you mentioned some grants that you either receive or you've been working on. So it looks like there might be something like $10 million of funding that you're receiving from grants in the state. Do you want to share a little bit more on how that works? So
right now we are primarily a DMHAS funded organization.
Can you explain what that is for some of our viewers who might not know?
Yep, so DMHAS is Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. We get grants for all of our programs, not necessarily funded at 100%. We have to utilize our other resources in order to meet those expectations financially. But we are provided a contract based off of the services. So the state, the Office of the Commissioner creates different service offerings, I would say, and based off this population, based off this community assessment, this is what we're looking for in this area, and then different community partners are able to put in sort of their request or their suggested plan on how they would utilize those dollars to meet that need. So that's something that's continuously, there's different opportunities on the table at different times. So it's important that we're constantly checking that, and our team of leaders is always in the database looking for new opportunities to provide different services and increased level of services to the community.
Okay, and so then for a lot of these services, is it something where when people come that they aren't paying for these services, that they're getting paid through these different grants from DMHAS like you were saying, or people going through your program, they need to pay to receive the services?
Nope. So because of the DMHAS grants for case management, the social rehab programs, those sort of things, there is no out-of-pocket cost. There are program fees for residential programs, just like if you were to pay rent for a majority of them. And our outpatient clinic is insurance. We take most insurances.
And even with the challenges with mental health parity and insurance, are you seeing that some of these insurance companies are covering for these services, or is it always kind of a challenge to try and get the payment from the insurance companies?
I would say it really depends on the payer. Okay. But for a majority of the insurance companies, they have adjusted, especially with the pandemic, they really have adjusted and increased their openness to support mental health services.
And it makes sense definitely from an insurer's perspective that, as you're probably more aware than I am, people with behavioral health issues, it impacts many other areas of their health. And so if you have different things going on with your behavioral health, based on data, it shows that your overall physical health care costs are something like 2 to 3 times what someone who has healthy behavioral health might have.
Absolutely. So it's really, I always say it's like the catch-22. Chronic illness creates chronic mental illness. When someone pays attention to their physical health, it in turn supports their mental health, right? It goes back and forth. But that goes back to the proactive and reactive topic that we talked about in the beginning. And if someone is proactive when they start to feel an increase in anxiety or an increase in depression, and we reach out to a local mental health organization and get set up with therapy, and we are proactive with that intervention, then we begin to build our toolkit of coping skills, which in turn will decrease the likelihood of, an inpatient hospitalization, let's say.
And it's tough because it isn't something like physical health where maybe you get on the scale and you say, oh, wow, I gained 30 pounds or 50 pounds, or, you go get your blood tested, you see what your cholesterol levels are. Of course, there's some tests like the PCLM and different tests to check for depression screening that gives you a rough idea, but I think the granularity just isn't always there. So there's kind of this gray zone of knowing, hey, maybe I'm just having a bad day, or maybe it's a bad week, or what's going on. But to take that next step is also a challenge as well. Like you mentioned, the stigma. One thing that you're trying to do with this race is just break down that stigma, so if people are getting challenged and having challenges, that they can reach out to receive the help and need.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of things here. So mental health and mental illness within itself is a gray area. There is no real black and white, despite the diagnostic criteria that sort of force that black and white because of insurance, restraints. So that's really an adjustment too, and really understanding that there is our mental health ebbs and flows on a day-to-day basis. Life experiences, daily stressors, the weather, living in Connecticut, New England, seasonal depression is real. But it's important to ensure that we are checking in with ourselves on a day-to-day basis to see where we're at, to see how our mental well-being is, and what we might need to do to take care of ourselves today that we may not have needed to tend to yesterday. But that constant self-assessment is so important to ensure that we are doing what we need to do to take care of ourselves. And then that brings me back to the school age aspect, and really that's where it starts, right? So we talk about the resources and the technology and, kids being attached to their phones now, right? But what if we were to switch that and to turn that around into something beneficial and provide them with the resources and the access, have the schools set up different apps, and teaching the kids how to practice mindfulness daily and set their timers and to create different self-care to-do lists, rather than just the American way of to-do lists that are measured by accomplishments and tasks completed, right? Building self-care tasks into the day-to-day goal. It's not just about how much money we make today or how many emails that we answer. It's about, did I practice 10 minutes of mindfulness? Did I move my body for 30 minutes today? Did I drink enough water? Because there is a connection with hydration and depression. So really, just teaching and providing that education and really spreading that awareness from grade school. I mean, I have a 2.5-year-old, and I talk to him now about his emotions. So really, beginning to break down those generational stigmas, honestly.
And also, like you said, just re-emphasizing being proactive as much as possible, because regardless of who we are going to have challenges, we are going to have struggles, ups and downs throughout life. But if we have these tools in our toolkit of mindfulness, meditation, and making sure we're getting physical exercise and these different things, I really feel like that's a key element to help build that resilience to face some of these challenges.
100%. I agree with you 100%.
Do you have any ideas or suggestions? You mentioned mindfulness, meditation. Do you have a technology or app that you guys like to use, or do you work with other organizations that you suggest different tools for people to use?
We don't necessarily have like a set go-to app. But if you were to just go into your app store and look up mental health,
there's tons.
There's tons. There's endless. And I literally find one, a different one every week. Also podcasts, right? Just opening your world, utilizing your phone and the resources that are right in our hands to work in our favor from a mental health standpoint. It really is endless opportunity.
That's great. I'm curious if you could share, I'm not sure if you're able to share a little bit on the demographics of people who utilize your services. Do you have a rough idea? And I know you said it's people above 18 years old.
Yep.
Do you have a rough idea in terms of what these people look like in terms of age or any other demographics you can share?
Yep, it's honestly a variety. We see a large population within the 40 to 60 range, but we do offer services, and like I had mentioned earlier, we do have a young adult clubhouse. So we just recently really started to increase our census there. The goal would be, with solidified funding, we would be able to expand that and have like our own little center that's separate from the Montauk building.
Awesome.
But with that comes funding and that need as well. But it's a variety from all different backgrounds. I think really again, to emphasize our Spanish-speaking providers, we also have Spanish-speaking case managers that really allow for that additional support to the community. I think really makes us unique.
That's for sure very unique. And before the pandemic, people were saying that potentially maybe 1 out of 4 Americans, roughly 25%, maybe on average are facing some kind of mental health challenge or fighting through different things. And one of our previous guests, they came on and said, well, after the pandemic, it's more like 5 out of 4 people were facing different things. That we all have brains, we all have emotions and all these different things.
That's the thing.
And we all are humans, so we face these things at one point or another in our life. And I think it's great what your organization is doing to break down this stigma and provide a lot of different services to people, because people who maybe have tried therapy once or twice or tried to get help here or there, they can get frustrated really easily.
Absolutely.
And then can just go down a downward spiral from there. How do you try and connect or help people who have already said, hey, I've tried these services or I tried another organization and it just didn't help me?
Try again. Right? Every day we're a different person than we were yesterday. So, but also try a different organization, try a different clinician. Everyone has a different approach. Don't give up on yourself, really, because you deserve to find someone or some sort of outlet to support your mental health. I think that the pandemic really opened everyone's eyes that mental illness isn't this big monster of, or the serial killers that are, or the massive portrayals of, or the dramatic portrayals that we see on TV or in movies, right? We all deal with mental health issues, mental health concerns. Do we all necessarily transition that into chronic mental illness? No, but people who never even have been exposed to mental illness felt something during the pandemic, right? That was definitely a trend, and it was the epidemic within the pandemic, right? Is the mental illness and that huge mental health crisis that we're still dealing with the ripple effects of.
Yeah, and maybe for a very long time,
Absolutely.
whether it's the younger generation, older generation, or like you said, it touches everyone. And I think the World Health Organization said something like depression is the leading cause of change for people at work, that it has a huge impact on people, on their productivity, on their ability to get things done. So I'm not sure, both from your clinician side, but also your administrative leadership role, maybe what advice do you have for people who are maybe going through different challenges? How can they best communicate that to their supervisor, to their colleagues, to their organization, without fear of saying something, then they're hired at will, they'll get fired?
So a big thing I would say is trust. Trust is important with any relationship, whether it's a work relationship, romantic relationship, friendship. But the goal is that when you are beginning to struggle with your mental health, is to communicate to someone. So maybe if you're beginning to struggle with depression or anxiety and it's beginning to impact your productivity at work, having a conversation with a confidant, not bringing it directly to the boss and not necessarily knowing what their reaction is going to be, but bringing it to a supervisor or any sort of leader that you trust, to just bounce an idea off of. And at the end of the day, it might not be the right fit for you. If they're unable to really support any sort of trusted conversation like that, where you're just saying, hey, you know what, Irving, I'm really struggling today. Can I have some support in completing this task? Or how can I adjust the timeline or the expectations here, if possible? Is this a now hear this task that needs to happen, where there's no wiggle room, or can I, take a half a day and really try to come back as a better person after I get some rest because I'm really struggling?
That's a great point. And of course, it's work, so there's challenges, there's ups and downs with that, and we can push ourselves. But then also there might be something to be said about having the right fit for the right role, the right organization, like you said, having that trusting relationship. It can make a world of difference.
Absolutely.
And I feel like maybe from an outsider perspective, more organizations now are kind of realizing that. And whether you're in a school or a nonprofit or working for the government, different places, feels like if you say, hey, I need to take a mental health day just to take care of myself, feels like more places are more supportive of that than maybe even just a couple years ago.
I would hope so. And really, again, that's part of my mission from a mental health awareness standpoint, is really decreasing concerns and being able to vocalize how we're feeling. I grew up very communicative about my emotions and oftentimes was told I was being too sensitive. And when I reflect back on it now as an adult, I'm like, was I, or was I expressing my emotions?
And in touch with your emotions.
And able to identify and articulate that. So I think that really, again, with that mission of ending the stigma, it's important to just have the conversations, but make sure that you're doing so when you're not in an intensely emotional state, right? Again, going back to proactive. If I am very emotionally heightened right now, it's not the best time for me to approach you, Irving, as my supervisor to say, I need a little bit more time, right? So that self-assessment and that daily check-in, seeing what do I need right now, what do I need today, and how can I provide that to myself in order to ensure that I can get through this day as smoothly as possible.
And we just have a couple minutes left, so before we end, I'd love to hear if you have some kind of higher arching goals or dreams that you envision on both with your career and your organization of how you want to impact mental health. And then maybe we could just wrap up talking about the event that's coming up in a couple weeks.
I want to continue to do community events. I want to continue to get the facts out there, to start the conversations, and really just create safe spaces, whether it's within my organization or out in the community, working with local nonprofits, continuing to, again, create the safe spaces for individuals to have these uncomfortable conversations, or even to welcome the idea on how they have those uncomfortable conversations.
Awesome. And if people are interested to find out more about your organization, how can they find out more? soundcommunityservices.org. We are also on Facebook, Instagram. We just got a TikTok. There's a couple of cute... Oh, you can still use it in America?
Oh, no, I don't know. I think so.
Yeah, at least for a few more months.
We have a couple of really cute posts that we just got up and running. And yeah, then also come check us out on May 18th at Winthrop Elementary School for the 5K.
Awesome. Well, hope to see you on May 18th. And thank you so much for all that you do to help people in the community. And thanks for taking your time out of your day.
Thank you so much for having me.